Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, in too deep. Sean sat alone in a dark confession booth, fighting back his tears. The mesh slat to his right took the shape of the crucifix. A door clicked open, and light shone through the slat, before vanishing as the door shut. "I wondered if I would see you again," said the priest, sitting beyond the divider to Sean's right. The devil sat on his left. "Read it to me one more time, Father," Sean said. The voice that spoke through the crucifix was soft. "I would be more help if you just told me." "Please, Father, don't. Just read me the passage." There was a slight shuffle of papers, and the priest began. "Forthwith Judas came to Jesus and said, 'Hail, Master,' and kissed him. Then they came, laid hands upon Jesus, and took him." Without a word, Sean left. Moonlight spilled across the Liffey while the sound of beer bottles clattering carried from the other side of the river. Sean meandered with his hands stuffed in his coat pockets, while his breath fogged in the cold air. A set of headlights crept from behind, casting his shadow lankly across the cobblestone. "Finn," called a hushed voice from behind. "Finn, where the heck have you been? I've been looking all over for you." Sean tensed, not wanting that name to follow him. Not tonight. He turned and held up a gloved hand, blocking the car's light. All he could see was the shadow hanging out of the driver's window, but he recognized the voice. It was his handler. "Christy?" Feck's sakes. Christy stepped out of the car and closed the door, the sound loud in the quiet street. He paced over to Sean and they walked together. Sean sighed. "I'm sorry I had to..." "See the feckin' priest again?" Christy touched Sean's shoulder and continued. "Finn, it'll be all right, lad. We're almost there. 5 years of hard work and it's all about to pay off." He released a large breath. The vapor rose and faded. "Feels longer." "Aye." Sean knew the question was coming and wondered whether Christy genuinely cared about his visit to the priest, or if he was simply trying to maintain a sense of familiarity. 5 years, and Christy was the only one from the outside Sean was allowed to contact. He'd requested a therapist, and Christy had come back a month later with the response, "Can't, lad. Too risky. Anything you need to get off your chest, you tell me." How could he tell Christy he wanted out of the gig? After 5 years of being deep undercover within the largest criminal gang in Ireland, how could he share his doubts now? "So," began Christy, "the question, the reason he was here, incoming, have they told you who you're going to whack?" Sean walked over to the river's railing and placed his hands upon it. "Neil," he muttered. "What?" "No," he said. "Don't be so hard on yourself. The guard's never going to let one of their own commit murder, not even to off some degenerate." Sean nodded. "As soon as you know anything, and I mean anything, location, victim, accomplices, you let me know and I'll pass it on. Conspiracy to commit murder. That's all we need. Besides, I shan't be hard to find. I'm stuck chauffeuring around the old Bell and Michiel. God knows I want to put that cranky so-and-so in cuffs myself. All right?" Sean nodded again. The truth lay on his tongue, involved in a bitter feud with a lie. "Christy," he said as his handler headed back to the car. Christy turned, the headlights again shining and making him appear like an obscure shadow. "You right?" Sean opted for the truth. "Tomorrow. The hit's tomorrow." The next day, Sean met Liam, Michial's son and Sean's unwitting informant, at the Gaelic Warrior Boxing Club. The 6 a.m. session stunk to high heaven with sweat, while the sound of dozens of gloves smacking pads filled the large shed. Sean climbed the steps onto the main ring where Liam watched Patrick, the Bullman Doherty, a young gun who eyed the world title. "Finn," said Liam, "what's the crack?" They clapped hands and embraced. The first thing Sean wanted to do was to ask about the hit, but he was well practiced in pretending to be someone he wasn't, so he kept his conversation cordial, waiting for Liam to bring it up. "How's he going?" Sean asked, gesturing at the Bullman, who was busting a sharp combo on his trainer's pads. Liam tilted his head, a habit usually reserved for discussing drug trafficking, and muttered, "He's got talent, but he's a bit of a hothead. I should get him in with you, teach him how to stay calm." "Calm?" Sean laughed. "I don't remember being calm. I just remember being belted." "Nonsense," said Liam. "I didn't take you on 'cause you can scrap. I manage hundreds of boxers. They can all do that. You can handle pressure, Finn. That's why we chose you for today." Sean's insides tensed, but his eyes remained unflinching. "Nothing I ain't done before." Sean hadn't told Christy the entire truth last night. He had told him the hit was going to be today, which it was. He also said he didn't know who they were taking out or where, and that was the truth. But he had said Liam wouldn't be there, and that was bollocks. "Well, you ain't done none like this," said Liam. "It's a Garda, a dirty coppa." Sean looked towards the boxing class taking place on the floor, hiding his reaction from Liam. Cold air swept over his skin. His shoulders shuddered, and his mind flashed to images from 4 years ago. He was 27, and the bright lights dazzled overhead. The coach was there, but he hardly remembered him. He remembered Michial and Liam in his corner. His opponent was some hard-bred scouser, as bald as a hard-boiled egg, with a mashed nose and a bitter scowl. The scouser eyeballed Sean, and Sean was shit-scared. "Don't worry about that prick," Liam had said. "He don't look tough. It's some inbred deformity." Sean turned and leant over the corner ring. Michial rubbed his shoulders, speaking sternly. "Come out with 3 fast jabs. Bam, bam, bam. He'll slip the last one, then pow right hook. You tracking?" Sean nodded and spat out agreement over his mouthguard. "All right," said Liam. "Give him hell." The bell dinged. It had been a tough fight, one that went the distance, and when it was all over, the name Finn was called out. He'd won, and the rest of the night was a blur down at Temple Bar. But before the first pint was raised, Sean had been overcome with a feeling, a deep relaxation that settled itself across every inch of his skin. A feeling that told him he didn't have to watch over his shoulder anymore. A feeling that said, "Relax. They trust you. And you trust them. You trust me, don't you, Finn?" Liam patted his shoulder. Sean swallowed and turned back to face him. "Of course I do," he said, his heart burning. That same flame that used to cinder at almost every conversation in his first year while he wormed his way in. Now they had discovered he was undercover, that he was a rat, and they were going to off him. "Good," Liam said. "Trust is important." A car pulled up in the drive, visible beyond the shed's rolled-up door. Christy stepped out of the front, shot Sean a troubled glance, and opened the back door. Michael, the old-school hardman and head of the largest drug trafficking cartel in all of Europe, stepped out. Michial, gray-haired with a stalwart face, raised his hand and beckoned the two men. "Come on, lads. Christie's driving." In the back seat, Sean kept his arms folded, squeezing his rib cage as it rose and fell with measured breaths. Liam was on his left, silent and staring out the window as the streets of Dublin flitted by. "I've been in this game for over 30 years," said Michel from the front seat. "And I'll tell you one thing, I've learned a lot. Firstly, if it falls into your lap, then it's too good to be true. Left here," he said to Christie. Christie flicked the indicator. "If you tell me the location, I can just punch it into maps." "No," said Michial. "Where we're going, I don't want the phone to remember." Christie's eyes burrowed into Sean through the rear-view mirror. Michial's gnarled finger appeared in the space between the two front seats, and he continued. "Second thing relates to the first. Be careful who you let in. The people you shouldn't trust, the ones who are out to get you, they make it easy. Make your life seem easy, I mean. Anything worthwhile is earned through hard work. Same goes for loyalty. The same thing I'm telling you, Finn. I've been telling Liam all my life. If it comes easy, it's cheap." Apart from the occasional direction from Michial, the rest of the drive was silent, although Sean was in constant communication to the Lord. "God Almighty, I ask for your courage as I venture once more into the crossroads. I'm torn between lives and ashamed to admit I have worn a mask for so long that I have forgotten my own face. I used to honor this job, finding those who lived between the cracks of a broken system, but I find myself slipping deeper into the same space with each passing hour. I am in too deep, and I fear the greater sin, to break my oath to the Garda Síochána, or to turn my back on what has become my family. I'm to blame, Father. I sowed the seeds of betrayal, and now I reap the bitter harvest. As Dublin has witnessed my struggle, may the heavens hear my plea. Pull me from this labyrinth, Lord, once and for all. Amen." Christie pulled up at Ballina, just north of the M50. Their destination was a large pasture that stretched between Dublin Airport and a litter-filled caravan park. "We're walking," said Michial. The clouds above were a lamb of gray, and although the grass was short, the men seemed to trudge. They were heading in the direction of the airport, by the pasture's boundary, where a snarl of bushes clambered along a chain-link fence. A shovel stood pressed into a mound of dirt, and beneath that opened a wide and deep hole. "You really think we trusted you, you fucking rat?" said Michial, turning around with a black pistol in his hand. Sean closed his eyes, trying to dampen his blazing heart. His lungs pulled in a thick breath of air, which only fed the fire more oxygen. He wanted to cry like he almost did in the confession booth, and figured he very well might. Why not? Sean opened his eyes and saw the pistol aimed straight at Christie. "He's an undercover," said Michial. "Been pretending to be my driver, all the while sniffing around my backside." Christie's hands were up, his eyes wide as headlights. "Number I'm no coppa." "Dirty bastard," said Liam, as he pulled out a pistol of his own, a small silver revolver. Mitchell pointed at his son's gun. "Finn, you're doing the honors." Liam held out the revolver. "Do this, and you're one of us, for true." Sean took the revolver, which was heavier than he anticipated. It sat in his palm, the same size as his hand. The bullet's golden casing stuck out from the chambers. One sat by the pin, anticipating the spark that would explode Sean free from the maze that had become his life. He just didn't know where to aim it. At Michio or Christie. "Who owns this pasture?" Sean heard himself say. "Don't worry," said Michelle. "I know the farmer. The land is only ever used for grazing. The hole's deep, and they don't crop here. The soil will never be disturbed. No one will find him." Sean took a moment, hearing the screech of a plane's engine as it readied for takeoff. Then he aimed the gun at Christie. "On your knees." Christie took a step back. "You can't be serious." "God damn it, get on your knees." Christie began to bend. "Turn around," said Sean, not wanting to see his face. "Turn around and get on your knees." Christie's eyes were darting around as if trying to find some sense in the world. He turned and got on his knees. "Please," he began. "Please, please, please, Jesus Christ. Please, God, please." Sean stepped behind Christie and held the gun to his head. Off in the distance, a plane began its long ascent into the clouds above. "Please," mumbled Christie. "Sean, please." Sean leant down, kissed Christie on the cheek, and whispered in his ear, "My name is Finn. Subconscious convictions. They say in the moment of tragedy, time slows down. During those precious seconds, the mind accelerates. Your surroundings blur and disappear as your attention turns inward. You consider the events that led you to this point and what you could, or should, have done different. You consider who this will affect. You're suddenly acutely aware of every regret you have, things you wish you had done, or words you wish you had said to people you may never see again. What they don't tell you is that during this time of reflection, those thoughts don't matter. The steps that led you to this point have already been taken. You cannot change the past, and now must deal with whatever comes as a consequence of your own actions. But what if those thoughts did matter? I'm going to lose my job. That was the first thought that raced through my mind as I watched the man pull a gun from beneath his baggy jacket. The same man I had passed through security only minutes before. This was my first day on the job, and I was already going to lose it. The years I spent in college, scrounging for food and borrowing my friends' couches and car seats just to have a place to sleep. The loans I took from friends, family, and disreputable sources. None of that mattered anymore, as the fruit of my hard-earned labor was going to sour and rot on the very first day. The moment the glint of his pistol caught my attention, my hand was already reflexively reaching for my own holster. In the mere moment it took to draw my gun and form the words on my tongue for the man to drop his weapon, I was presented with a choice. Do I fire at the man, whose own gun is pointed at the young woman behind the desk? Or do I wait and try to talk him down? If I hesitate, he could kill the woman before I fire. Or I could fire first, not giving him the chance to stand down. What if the gun was fake, and this was just an attempt at intimidation? Does this scenario meet the requirements for the rules of engagement? With my decision made, I shout for the man to put down the gun. Before the last word had fled from my mouth, an explosive sound that will, from that moment on, forever haunt my waking moments rings out. I made the wrong judgment. The man pulled the trigger. Time continues to crawl by as the young woman's body drops to the ground, red misting the air and painting the wall behind her as she crumples out of sight behind the desk. Seemingly to compensate for its slowed pace, time then speeds up. People scream and drop to the ground. A mother flings herself over her child. An elderly man clutches his chest and faints. I have little recollection of what follows. I'm sure police arrive and subdue the man, as I suddenly find myself sitting outside on the curb. Uniformed officers question me. I'm not sure what answers I give them. All I can do is stare at their holstered guns. 3 seconds. That was all the time it took for the man to pull his weapon and end a life. Those 3 seconds play on repeat over and over. I lose my job due to my own negligence. If I had followed proper procedure, I would have found the man's gun as he came through security. Out of job and with a permanent black mark on my record, my degree and certifications become nothing more than useless pieces of paper. My brand new car I financed is repossessed. I return to couch surfing and lending in order to get through each day. Loud sounds now terrify me. The bang of a car door closing has me reflexively reaching for a sidearm that isn't there, only for nausea to rise at the mere thought of a weapon. Red mist and a body crumbling to the ground. It only took 3 seconds for that man to pull his pistol and kill. I can no longer make decisions for myself. I fear that whatever choice I make will be the wrong one, somehow causing another life to end. Second-guessing every move I make completely overwhelms my day-to-day actions. I cannot help but spiral within my own tortured thoughts to the point where I am too terrified to even move. It only took 3 seconds. The instant the man pulled the gun from his jacket, instinct led me to grab my son, push him to the tile floor, and cover his small body with my own. The only thought racing through my mind was his protection. Having only recently lost his father, I couldn't fathom losing Evan as well. A spray of red, the body of a young woman falling to the floor, the thud of her body colliding with tile echoing in my head. What if that had been Evan? What if he were older than the one working behind the desk when someone decided that they would end his life? Who would have protected him if I wasn't here? The security guard by the door, frozen with his gun raised, solidifies my resolve that no one can protect Evan like I can. It takes 3 police officers to pry me from my son's protection. Only after several reassurances that the gunman has been subdued and that we are safe am I willing to detach myself from Evan. Sweeping my sobbing 4-year-old into my arms, I hold him close as I provide the police with my statement, receive the okay from medical personnel to leave, and speed the safety of our small home. That could have been Evan standing behind the counter. No one can protect him like I can. With school shootings a very real possibility, I pull Evan out of school just in case. I find a new job that will allow me to work from home while homeschooling at the same time. Groceries are delivered to the house. Contact-free, of course. The only times I find myself not being able to avoid leaving the safety of our home are for regular visits to the doctor's office. I put these off for as long as I can without risking Evan's health. Every individual we pass is a threat, as who knows what weapons they carry, hidden beneath their clothing. Who knows what intentions they may have, or when they might decide to take their frustrations out on my innocent child. A local news broadcast covers the story of an injured criminal waking during surgery and attacking the caretakers and 2 bystanders. What if Evan and I had been there for an appointment? Even the hospitals weren't safe anymore. I called and canceled Evan's upcoming checkup. The doctor's office called at least once a day for a week straight to reschedule Evan's appointment. I let every call ring to voicemail. I know what is best for Evan. No one can protect him like I can. The phone calls eventually stop. The following week, 2 police officers arrive at our house, claiming the hospital staff called asking for them to ensure we were okay. I reiterate through the closed door that all is well, but I refuse to open my home to them. I can see from the window the weapons they carry. What if they are not really police officers? What if they are here to hurt Evan? The next day, the police return with a woman dressed in a pantsuit and claiming to be from Child Protective Services. I refuse them entry and tell Evan to hide in his room. The woman claims that she is worried for my son's well-being and begs me to open the door. She doesn't have to worry about Evan. That is my job. Only I can protect him. They took Evan from me. They came in force, showing me documents that mean nothing to me as I sit handcuffed on my own couch. They claim I am not mentally fit to take care of my own son, as if they know anything about me or the dangers the outside world presents to my innocent child. I try to get them to understand that he needs me, that only I can protect him. Why can't they understand? They tell me I can argue my case in court. Why does no one understand? How can no one see how dangerous the world is? It only takes one man with a gun deciding to end a life. No one can protect Evan like I can. The customer service smile I have plastered on my face falls away as the man across the desk from me reaches beneath his jacket and pulls free a pistol. Despite the situation, I find myself surprised by the condition of the gun. My father was an avid weapon collector, and, as his only child, I was subjected to hours of instruction on all topics involving firearms. The man's gun isn't anything special, and is a brand that most households have stashed away somewhere for home defense. What caught my attention was the poor condition of the weapon. Scuffs and scratches cover most of the surface, and bare metal glints through gouged paint and texture. Wherever this man had obtained the gun from, there was a good chance it was either stolen or sold illegally. By the time the last remnants of my smile disappeared, and my quick analysis of the man's pistol ends, I realized too late that I am the target of his aggression. Raised by a gun enthusiast, I thought I had seen them from every angle. I realized then that never have I stared down the barrel of one. It was a sight immediately burned into my mind, and one I never wanted to see again. I watch in slow motion as the muscles just under the skin of the man's hands tense and his finger begin to pull the trigger. I can't help but think with irony that I won't have to worry about living with that fear. Silence follows the explosion of a firing pistol. The scene before me is familiar, though I can't determine why or how. I stand before a young woman, a waist-high desk the only barrier between us. My right hand grips the cold, unfamiliar metal of the pistol I purchased from a stranger earlier this morning. I stare down the top of the gun at the young woman. She seems more interested in the details of the gun rather than the fact that it is aimed directly at her. There is something familiar about this woman, though I am sure I have never met her before. An irritating itch nags in the back of my mind that something here isn't right. I have been here before, but where am I? I want to turn and take in my surroundings, but am unable to move anything other than my eyes. Time seems to have slowed to a near pause. Glancing at the surface of the desk, I notice a stack of credit card flyers. Oh, that's right. I'm at a bank. One of the few left that actually handle cash instead of digital currency. Why am I at the bank? The memories come slowly, as though I am recollecting them through a vat of honey. The images are hazy at first, but slowly become clearer. I am desperate. The company I worked at collapsed due to fraud. As an accounting associate, I was one of the prime suspects in the case. It has been 2 years since I was accused as an accomplice, and the investigation is still ongoing. In those 2 years, my entire life fell apart. My fiancée left me, taking the word of the media over the man she planned to marry. She took our unborn child with her, refusing to allow me any part in the child's life. Do the investigation, I couldn't find a job. I lost my fiancé, child, and career. I lost all reason to continue to try. All I have left is a roof over my head, and even that will be gone soon, unless I do something. Robbing the bank wasn't a thought-out plan, but rather a decision made in desperation. Why had I thought this would be a good idea? I've never done anything like this before. This isn't me. Who have I become? The eyes of the woman before me begin to widen as she realizes she is staring down the barrel of my gun. Realization, surprise, fear, and then acceptance cross her features within a heartbeat. My hand tenses, my index finger beginning to pull the trigger. Wait. I've been here before. I've done this before. I've killed this woman already. Why am I doing this? For money? Is this really how far I have fallen? Would I really consider killing a woman for whatever change she might have in the drawer? Wait, no. I have already considered this. In fact, I have already done it. I am staring down the sights of my gun into the eyes of a dead woman. That is why she is familiar to me. I know I've killed her, but I don't remember what happened afterwards. Was I arrested? Was I shot? Glancing to my right, I notice a woman in the process of throwing herself over a young boy. Her son, Evan. Evan? Why do I know the boy's name? That isn't all I know. I know that the mother will be so scarred from my actions that she will hide her child away from the world, paranoid and plagued by the idea of some stranger hurting the only family she had left. Evan will spend the rest of his childhood in the foster care system. I've never met them before, so why do I know this? I shift my attention to my left, where a young security guard points his own firearm in my direction, his mouth open in a silent shout. I can see the fear and indecision wrought into his features. He will lose his job and any chance of a healthy life due to my actions today. Finally, I look back to the woman before me. She loses her life because of me. These are my victims. I can see the consequences these innocent bystanders will spend the remainder of their lives trying to cope with. All because I was desperate to pay my rent. I don't want this. I don't want to kill this young woman who has done nothing to wrong me. I don't want to cause the security guard to spend the rest of his life terrified of strangers and loud noises. I don't want Evan to grow up without his mother. My hand relaxes and the gun soundlessly clatters to the ground before everything fades to black. Looking up from the report scrolling across his tablet, Jared smiled at his supervisor, Dr. Daniels, who had just entered the lab. "Good afternoon, doctor." The subject passed on the first run. His remorse caused a shift in his subconscious, and he dropped the gun before killing the woman this time. Dr. Daniels nodded, a bit of the ever-present tension in his shoulders relaxing. "That is good. Pull him out of the simulator and send the report to the recovery team. With luck, he'll be eligible for reintegration within the next year or so." After receiving the affirmative from his associate, Dr. Daniels headed for the door, sparing one last glance at the man lying on the bed connected to the simulator unit. The device was revolutionary to solving overcrowding within the municipal system. Based on their progress with therapists and reports provided by behavioral specialists, qualified convicts are removed from their cells and transferred to one of a few facilities housing advanced neurological simulators. Rather than spend years within a cell comprised of bars and mortar, they are instead imprisoned within the walls of their own subconscious. They are then subjected to relive the events of the crime they committed, as well as experience firsthand the impact their misconduct left on their victims. The results were astounding, proving that remorse and guilt, if stressed on a deeply subconscious level, could change the morality of an individual. Rather than spend the remainder of their lives behind bars, these ex-convicts would receive a second chance. Depending on their results after undergoing intense therapy, they would be allowed to reintegrate into a controlled section of society, a sector that was developed specifically for these individuals. They would not be allowed to return to the public, as retribution is still demanded for their actions. They would, however, be provided the opportunity to work in their chosen profession, earn a wage, and make something better of themselves while serving out the remainder of their sentence. Tearing his gaze from the man lying in the hospital bed, Dr. Daniels stepped out of the room and headed for the next lab, Neptune's lair. When I met her, word on the street was that Esme was beyond help. Her friends called her crazy and borderline. By the religiously inclined of former times, she might have been thought of as demon-possessed. During drunken fits, she'd get into fistfights or threaten to throw herself from freeway overpasses. She walked a thin line and repeatedly upset rumors of her demise, taking immense pride in being what she called stronger than dirt. She had a breathalyzer in her car. 2 years ago, she'd overturned her Hyundai in an incident where she was discovered to be 3 times over the legal blood alcohol limit. She made financial ends meet by renting her body out for clinical trials, hoping the entire time that she'd taken placebos instead of the experimental medications upstart pharmaceutical companies produced for everything from bipolar disorder to angina. There were times she'd come home from one of these lab rat money runs with side effects, bad ones, but they'd eventually subside and she'd make jokes about how at least she hadn't become the victim of sudden death syndrome. That Esme, tougher than dirt, as resilient as rubber. Even though she smoked all my stuff, drank all my wine, and frequently resorted to flings with Little Dicky, a former boyfriend I suspected provided her with something I couldn't, I felt something for her. I made what I called minimum rage, flipping beef patties and assembling burgers at a late-night boardwalk diner called Cracker Jack's. Before the week was up, with Esme's and my drug debts, I'd be begging tourists for change to buy spare cigarettes. For a while, we resided in a tent on the rooftop of a building where Desmond Tutu Phillips, a friend since freshman year in high school, was the apartment building manager. Desmond risked losing his job for giving Esme and me a key to the restricted access rooftop. Despite our unconventional ways, he had the patience of Jesus with us. Even so, I'd still piss over the side of the building, and Esme would relieve herself where and whenever convenient. When we got too grungy, we'd take care of our hygiene needs at the showers meant for beachgoers. At night, we read copiously by battery-operated lantern light and shared a predilection for somber stuff. Our favorites were Rimbaud, Baudelaire, Camus, and Hamid. When we tired of the Cracker Jack's grub, I'd bring to our squatter pad. We'd get high and end up eating red velvet cake and whatever else she'd send me to shoplift from the supermarket, a 10-minute walk away. On the stroll back home, paranoid from the nearly toxic cosmic kush, and with my backpack stuffed with our pilfered renegade sustenance, I'd be startled by the sounds of passing cars, thinking a cop was sooner or later bound to stop me for stealing Esme's and my daily booze and bread. Although I feared the cops, I always suspected my weed paranoia was caused by a much deeper-seated guilty conscience. I should have confronted Little Dicky a long time ago. Also, I had left my mother's side when I felt her senescence was becoming a burden. There's no way I had the resolve or character to be the caregiver for an aging parent. When I confessed these thoughts to Esme, she'd dismiss my concerns and say I needed to stop overthinking things. I remember once when Esme and I were walking home from a party, she said, pointing to a couple of graffiti-spraying gangbangers, Javier, I'm scared. That guy with the Supreme hoodie has a gun. He pointed it at me, never sure whether she really meant such things, but fueled by drug and alcohol-induced courage, I confronted the guy. Hey man, I said to the one Esme had referred to. You know what I am? A janky spick boy with a death wish, he answered with a sneer. No, I'm a delinquent out to get delinquents. What you gonna do with that heater? Turns out he didn't have a gun, just another can of neon spray paint, but he wasn't overly enthused by the tete-a-tete I had with him. He and his friend didn't kick my ass, but Mr. Supreme sprayed me in the eyes with the paint. Esme started mouthing off to him, but even though I was partially blinded, I pulled her away for fear that we'd both get battered. Those are the kind of stupid things I'd do for Esme, but the important thing to me was she would call me things like her ballsy little soldier and lavish me with affection after I'd go out on a limb for her. I put blood, sweat, and tears into the relationship, and rarely did I think it wasn't worth it. The end of our star-crossed romance began after Esme came back from the free clinic where Dr. For the People, Randolph Hamilton, told her she had cervical cancer. After she heard the diagnosis, Esme became determined to go out with a bang. She began visiting Little Dicky more frequently. She demanded I steal tequila instead of wine from the supermarket, and when she drank the Patron I'd bring to our squatter's abode, her temper became hair-trigger sensitive. The only respite I'd get from her gloomy rages would come when I'd invite her to the beach when the moon was full. Apparently, Little Dicky had something against doing things that smacked of romance or chivalry with her. Moonlit midnight swims in the Pacific were one such pastime Dicky didn't seem to have a taste for. On the nights Esme and I'd sink our toes into the wet sand while the moon's phantasmagorical light reflected onto the dark side of the earth, she'd momentarily forget about her terminal diagnosis. She'd also forget about her mortal condition whenever we'd watch movies at the rooftop squat. I don't know if it's the case with most people, but when I'm high and watching a good flick, I'll hear messages in the movie's dialogue. I'll also interpret anything someone says out loud about the film to have personal relevance. I've heard these phenomena are called thoughts of reference by those in the field of mental health. Schizophrenics have them, but I guess when I'm high, I might get a little schizophrenic. Makes me wonder why I keep smoking the Cosmic Kush. But one night, while viewing Scarface with Esme for the 5th or 6th time, she said something along the lines of, God, it's just so good. I can't get enough of it. To my cognitively distorting and high mind, Esme wasn't talking about the film's extended denouement where Tony Montana gets shot by his sister, then exterminates a battalion of rival narco-gangster cockroaches before he ends up floating face down, bloodied and bullet-riddled in his The World Is Yours Miami drug boss mansion. No, Esme wasn't talking about the film. My mind interpreted her statement as referring to her relationship with Little Dicky. Before Montana gets the shotgun blast in the back that finally does him in, Esme exclaimed, Jesus, we all know he's doomed. When she said that, I couldn't help but believe that she was referring to our friend and benefactor, Desmond. If for whatever reason Desmond was doomed, Esme and I would soon be off the rooftop and into the street, nowhere for a loving couple to be, especially when one in the pair has terminal cancer. I didn't know whether Esme's words would attract fate, but I knew that her despair was making her behave more erratically. She started to break down in tears when she'd think of having to be holed up in a hospital or hospice, awaiting the inevitable during the last stages of her disease. That night after the movie, and while coming down off the perception-altering shrubbery, I decided to take a course of action. The next morning, I bought 2 tabs of acid off Tripster Todd a boardwalk dealer of LSD, and various other hallucinogens. I told Esme that we'd go for a swim at the beach after I got off my shift at midnight. We walked to the beach at close to 2 a.m. On the way there, I picked a purple flower, whose name I didn't know, from a garden in front of a well-tended house. As we walked, I put the flower in Esme's hair. The moonless night sky's inkiness was blinding. The tide was low, and we had to walk a good distance to the water. There was no one on that portion of the beach except for us. As she dipped down into the waters ahead of me, Esme expressed her gratefulness for not having any open wounds, given that a recent outbreak of carnivorous bacteria made coastal immersions risky for bathers thusly exposed. Before going waist-deep into the water, I surreptitiously took the 2 tabs of LSD I'd bought from Tripster. After letting the acid dissolve, I gave Esme a prolonged French kiss. In little time, my vision, swayed by the acid, started playing tricks on me. Although there was virtually no light on the beach, my eyes summoned a warm, radiant glow in the heavens above. "Jav, I feel funny," said Esme. I splashed her with water and told her that she was okay, that everything was going to be okay. I knew what I had to do. I played out a dialogue in my mind where I said, "You need to confess," and asked her why she was always going to see little Dickie. In my mind, she responded, "My lips are sealed." "That's exactly what they aren't," my courageous imagination told her. We were up to our solar plexuses in the ocean. I took hold of her shoulders and dunked her beneath. She came up, laughed, then, giddy from the acid, childishly said, "Jav, I'm going to die." I said, "No, you're not, love. You're going to live forever. Remember, Esmeralda Lucero is tougher than dirt." I repeated the dunking gesture, this time less playfully, taking a fraction of a second longer than Esme deemed comfortable for her to be under the tide. The 3rd time I dunked her was even more forceful. She struggled in my grip under the water. I crossed a threshold. She freed herself from my hold, surfaced, then said, "What do you think you're doing?" More in the form of an exclamation than a question. I smiled. The white of my teeth infuriated Esme more. "It's not funny, you hijo de puta. Why do I feel like I'm tripping?" She screamed before trying to dig her nails into my eyes. The time had arrived. I knew the cure. I put her neck into a vice-like hold in the crook of my right elbow and dunked her under the dark waters again. Her arms flailed about. She tried to kick, she writhed, but I held fast. I could hear her submerged cries, but they were muffled and accompanied by an up-bubbling of exasperated air. Her writhing gradually slowed down until she managed a last, weak exhalation and final spasm, and then yielded her spirit to the Pacific Ocean. I left her body floating where I had drowned it. Even though no one had heard or seen what transpired, I was still tripping on the acid, and the walk back to Desmond's apartment building was haunted by bogeymen and illusionary images of people pointing fingers and whispering accusations. I climbed the stairs to the rooftop where my unhoused person's hovel was located, lit a cigarette, and was overcome by an urge to write a song. I took out my notebook and a pen and started scribbling. Moonless night, world's delight, me, you drowning, out of sight, we fear most. Give up the ghost, but before we do, let's make a toast on our tongues. Still feeling young, summon moon, and avoid the sun. We'll be scared, 'cause we've dared. Court Pluto, in Neptune's lair. I put the pen down, satisfied with the verses, and thought of the poor and beaten down, of the fact that we are all victims to the onslaught of implacable and incorrigible time. I thought of what could have been, and of what now would never be between Esme and me. After another cigarette, I laid on my rooftop sleeping bag, unable to forgive myself, despite my best intentions, for the simple thing, the merciful thing I'd done. Before I knew it, I had cried myself to a still and unrepentant slumber, the sleep of both the wolf and the lamb, of the innocently voracious and the imperfectly innocent. Killer ratings. The stealth drone hovered over the backyard of the suburban house, its camera zooming in close to its subject. A boy, kneeling on the lawn, in one hand a praying mantis, the other a pair of tweezers. Holding the insect close to his expressionless face, he slowly ripped the legs off the mantis. Then once that task was completed, immersed the body in a jar of water that lay on the grass in front of him until the insect stopped struggling and was still. A thin smile played across the boy's face. "Hey, Dave," Richie called out across the bustling studio of Hitchcock Media Enterprises. "Come take a look at this. Think we have a future winner here." Dave looked up from his editing station and walked over to the Richie's terminal, where the balding heavyset man was reviewing the drone footage. "Check this." Richie clicked the play button. "I reckon we got ourselves a classic Type C." Dave watched the replay and nodded. "Yep, definitely Type C. He will be moving on to small animals next, I bet." Dave grabbed a chair and sat down. "What backstory have you got on him so far?" Richie pulled up a file onto the terminal screen. "Let's see, we got a 14-year-old kid, only child, with single-parent mother. Never knew his father." He scrolled down. "Mother is a Christian fundamentalist, breastfed the kid until he was 2 years old." Narrowed his eyes. "Oh, and get this. She would hop into the bath with him every night and sponge him clean up until he was 10 when he started getting erections." Dave barked a short laugh. "Jesus, where do these people come from?" He leant back in the chair. In the future, people would look back on this time as the era of surveillance, where nothing could be hidden unless you were the rich elite. Still, it made their job a hell of a lot easier, which was to make a shitload of money off human misery. Dave liked to think they were performing a necessary evil, like a safety valve on the pressure cooker that was modern society. That made what he did a little easier, and although he still might not sleep well at night, he did sleep in a large mansion in a secure community next to a cosmetically perfect wife. Richie was talking again. Dave focused his attention on the screen. "I've run the algorithms, and the AI is coming up with a 93% chance of activation by the age of 25. "Those are good odds," said Dave, rubbing his chin. "Put a flag on his file, and we'll check back in a few years." Dave stood up and clapped the other man on the shoulder. "The fans are gonna love this one. Richie, good job as always." Richie grinned. "Thanks, Chief." Dave returned to his desk, where he was currently editing the latest true crime documentary, to be released later that month. This one was a typical Type B case, a nurse who had been stealthily killing cancer patients by injecting air into their IV drips. A pretty mundane, angel of death scenario, but HME had gotten onto her pretty quick, so the broadcasting and publishing rights hadn't cost an arm and a leg. Dave didn't think ratings would be that great, but they had managed to get some decent footage from the hospital and the journal the nurse had written, so it would be worth syndicating to make a bit more profit. HME's documentaries were some of the highest rating reality shows on Downstream, and let's face it, that's all that existed on mass social media these days. But things had been a little lean of late, and they needed a big, high-profile case. Dave considered Richie's latest find. Type C cases were always male, of low to average intelligence, with suppressed trauma from childhood caused by a family member, and would exhibit acts of violence, around the onset of adolescence. The victims were usually female and involved sexual violence or torture before death. We need another Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez, Dave thought. They don't make them like they used to. Dave chuckled. Imagine if we could have got those guys to sign, we would be drowning in royalties. Still shaking his head in amusement, he wandered over to the publicity department. A tall, angular-looking woman, poring over some glossy printouts at her desk, looked up at his approach. "Hey, Dave. How can I help you?" "Hey, Jenny. Just wondering if Anthony is around." Jenny pursed her lips. "He was on sick leave, I think." She checked the screen in front of her. He was supposed to be back a few days ago, but I haven't seen him. Maybe he needed some more time off." Okay. I guess it's hard to find good help these days, eh?" Jenny laughed politely. Dave leaned against the desk. "Look, maybe you can help me. I'm trying to come up with a catchphrase for the latest doco, but I'm stumped." Jenny furrowed her brow in concentration. "That's the nurse one, right?" Dave nodded. And she was an elderly type as well." Her eyes lit up, and she clicked her fingers. "How about the matron of mercy?" Dave contemplated the idea. "You know, that's great." He gave Jenny a thumbs up. "It'll play well, considering all the victims were terminal patients anyway. Make for some nice, wholesome family viewing." Jenny gave an absent-minded smile as she returned to her work. Dave was just finishing off the credits for the nurse documentary when one of the interns came rushing over, flustered and red-faced. "Sir, I think we have something big," the young man said breathlessly. "Maybe even a possible type A." Dave pointed. "Juan, isn't it?" He prided himself on knowing all the names of his staff, even down to the Gophers. "Look, calm down. Take a seat and tell me what you've got." The intern sat down and held out a tablet. "We just received some info from one of our talent scouts out in San Francisco. Female, body count of 2, high likelihood of type A." Dave glanced at the picture. Pretty blonde, with freckles and all, a real girl-next-door beauty. He felt a thrill of exhilaration run through him. A type A was the rarest of the rare, a serial murderer who was charismatic, highly intelligent, and usually politically or ideologically motivated. They were also the most difficult ones to get to sign on the dotted line. "Okay, I'm gonna need more details here." Juan read from the screen in his hand. Gordon Calloway, the third CEO of the hedge fund Armada Law Deed, was found strangled to death in his penthouse suite at the Regency in LA 6 days ago. Our surveillance picked up this woman leaving the room soon after the time of death. Then she just seemed to disappear. The young man licked his lips. Then 2 days ago, a male body was found in a 4th-floor room of the Fairmont in San Francisco. His skin had been totally removed by a surgical device, most likely a scalpel. As a result, the deceased is yet to be identified. He paused and looked at Dave. The same woman was again detected by our surveillance leaving the scene. Dave raised his eyebrows. 2 different methods of killing. Now that was unusual, even for a type A. This was getting better and better. "Now, you are going to love this," the intern smiled. "We have ID on the suspect. Her name is Samantha Bronte, 21 years old and currently studying a master's degree in criminology and comp science at New York University." Dave opened his mouth to speak, but Juan held up his hand. "And this is the clincher. Her parents were the last victims of one Simon Peters." Dave felt his jaw drop. Simon Peters, a.k.a. the Cuckold Strangler. His doco from 4 years ago was one of the highest rating of all time. Jesus Christ, this is insane. "Hey, Richie," he yelled out. "Get over here pronto." "What is it?" Richie asked, eyes gleaming. He could tell when something good was going on. Simon Peters, give us a recap. Okay. So his MO was prowling the motor inns of West Florida, where he would stalk and choose his victims, always middle-class couples. Richie scratched his cheek thoughtfully. He would break into their room early in the morning, tie the couple up at gunpoint, rape and strangle the woman in front of her partner, then slit the guy's throat with a hunting knife. He did us a big favor as well by recording the last 2 murders with his phone. Richie looked down at his hands. Of course, we couldn't use such explicit footage for our feature, but somehow, he winked at Dave. Somehow the footage made its way to the dark web, and the notoriety of that boosted our ratings tenfold. Dave let out a breath. There must be some connection here, but that's not important right now. We need to track this Samantha down, and fast. Dave and Richie exchanged knowing looks. This is big, Dave said. Possibly the biggest thing we've ever seen. A notification pinged on Juan's tablet, and he gasped out loud. What is it? Dave queried sharply. The intern looked up. We have just detected the suspect arriving at North Vegas Airport, and from her credit card records, she has booked a room at the MGM Grande for tonight. Dave felt the hairs on his arms stand up. All right, I'm going to take care of this one personally. We can't afford to lose this. Gonna pack an overnight bag and take our private Gulfstream to Vegas ASAP. Should be there in under 2 hours. He pointed at Richie. Organize a car for me and alert everyone that it's all hands on deck. Richie nodded briskly. Will do. And good luck, Dave. Dave arrived at the MGM in the early evening, the desert sunset casting an eerie blood-like haze across the dusty parking lot. The hotel lobby was relatively quiet. A few tourist groups checking in, and a scattering of people at the bar. He looked down at the picture on his phone and scanned the area. Nope, not here. Dave fought down a wave of frustration. Okay, gotta stay calm. He glanced at the bar. I'll grab a drink and wait. He ordered a beer, and the gorgeous raven-haired woman next to him gave him a tentative smile. He nodded briskly. Any other time I'd be interested, but it's all business right now, sweetie. He took his drink and sat down at a table, which commanded a view of the lobby entrance and the elevators leading to the suites. This was the crucial moment, the first contact. He found most of the time the killer was flattered, both by the money offered and the chance at infamous immortality. Their name remembered long after the victims had been forgotten. Most of the time. His phone started ringing. Hello? It was Richie. Dave, we got a problem. We've checked the hotel camera and there is no sign of our target, coming or going. Looks like we got scammed. Dave sighed bitterly. Damn it, well, she must be in Vegas somewhere. He looked out the entrance. It was dark now, with the first stars appearing in the velvet night. Look, I'm gonna stay here for a while. Keep your eyes and ears open, and let me know if anything develops. Roger that, Richie replied. Dave sighed again. Might as well get another beer. The dark-haired lady was still at the bar, a few whiskeys in by the looks of the glasses in front of her. She looked at him from under lowered eyelids. I was watching you. Looks like you've been stood up. Dave flashed a wry grin. Yeah, you could say that. A faint smile. Me too. I don't think my date is turning up. She gave him a sultry glance. Look, I have a room here and a bottle of sparkling on ice waiting for me. Want to come up and have a nightcap? Dave chuckled. Still got it. Sure, why not? Maybe we can salvage something out of this shitty situation. Her room was on the 12th floor, with an impressive view of the Strip. As she was closing the door behind them, Dave asked, "Hey, I didn't catch your name?" "Oh, how rude of me. It's Samantha," she replied breathily, just as he felt a sharp pinprick, and then everything went black. He awoke groggily, unable to move. After a quick assessment, he realized that was because his hands and feet were restrained with zip ties, and he was lying on a bed with duct tape holding him down. "Awake now, my little Dave?" The woman was standing beside the bed, gently caressing his arm. He shivered with a frisson of fear. "You're Samantha Bronte?" he demanded with wide eyes. "And how do you know my name?" Samantha smiled sardonically. "Oh, I know everything about you." She sat down on the edge of the bed. "You fell into my trap like such a good little boy." "But how?" Dave stammered. "You'd be surprised at what you can do with a degree in computer science." She continued stroking him with her fingernails. "Especially when you have HME's login details from a loyal employee." She took something from the bedside table and plopped it onto his chest with a sickening squelch. "I don't think your buddy Anthony is going to be coming back to work anytime soon." He gazed at the reddish-colored object with growing horror. Holy shit, it was his skin. It was Anthony's skin. Samantha dug her nails into his arm viciously. Dave cried out in pain. "Do you know what it's like to lose your parents in the most hideous way, and then to have their violation watched again and again by your millions of depraved fans?" Dave gasped. "Look, honey, we don't make these killers. We just make them famous. If not us, then someone else would." "I'm not so sure." Samantha's voice dripped pure venom. "But you're going to find out, all of you, what a really dedicated serial killer can do." She took something from under the bed. "You and your puerile nicknames. It's only poetic justice to return the favor. Do you recall one of your first documentaries?" Samantha stood up. "I believe it was called The Boston Bludgeoner." The rusty sledgehammer was the last thing Dave saw, robbing hookers. When the cab struck us, Mecca ricocheted off 7th Avenue South and died. Mecca was a stupid nickname for a first-generation Chinese guy from Queens. He always said that any woman would make the journey for his love. Even dead, he looked like a heart attack waiting to happen. Maybe he lost control of the motorcycle because of a heart attack. Overeaters should not be getaway drivers. A siren wailed. There's always a siren in the city. But Mecca was past that siren's help, and me, I didn't want it. I picked up the bag and limped toward the Bowery. Starred. At home, I sat by an open window, swatting gnats and biting my tongue as rubbing alcohol seeped into the gashes on my knees. Garbage wafted in the breeze. Everything surrenders during summer in the city. It would be my luck to rob an in-call service, then die from an infection caused by a motorcycle wreck during the getaway. A small bag of clothes and the money sat by the door. I had planned to leave for Port Authority right away, but surrendered to the Chinatown futon instead. When I woke up, I opened another beer and wondered about the protocol for riding a bus cross-country drunk. What the fuck? It's not like it's first-class transportation, or like they'll ask me to drive. I can be drunk, I thought. But I definitely needed to shower because I'd kill anyone who sat next to me on a bus, smelling like I smelled. Jesus Christ, heading west is always such a big deal. Seems like no one ever heads west without someone dying, I thought. I still think that. Mecca drove like a maniac the first night we met at a bar in the East Village. I needed someone to buy me drinks. He said he'd buy me dinner too. The bike flew toward the West Village like a shooting star that sizzled to its demise at an outdoor cafe full of hopefuls searching for a spark or some such fuckery. He slurped a lot of fettuccine. I sipped a lot of Chianti. You were a Soho boomer? I couldn't care less. Really, I couldn't. But he was buying, so I pretended to care. Yeah, a loft baby. My parents own a laundromat in Flushing, and they gave me money to invest in a .com, which went under. Then they gave me money to open a skate shop in the East Village. It's high roller. I ball. You skate? Fuck no, but I don't have to. I just have to make sure others do. What does your beautiful self do all day? Temperature. As a receptionist mostly. I cater sometimes. I studied art, painting and drawing. A few years ago, I was featured as part of a new artists show at a gallery. No one bought anything. Then 9/11s. The gallery closed. Hey, maybe you can draw some designs for the shop. You sure you're not hungry? Eating kept me from getting sloppy drunk and forgetting. I raised my glass to not eating. He pointed his fork. Sauce splattered my nose. You need to paint and shit. Be an artist and shit. Let's make you one and shit. Star. A few months later, his shop closed. Temp jobs ceased. It was the second September 11th death toll. Mecca, a baller no more, depended on family money to survive while buying me groceries, carrying the bags up 6 flights while I rearranged cabinets to make room for all the things I like to eat while hanging out at my place. You like these? God, oh God, I love the creamy center. Have one, he said, ripping open a plastic-wrapped cake with his teeth. I shook my head. Not eating meant not keeping up with time or when I last left the apartment. No work meant no reason to leave. After 97 years in New York City, the insurance office where I temped succumbed to 2 planes that didn't hit it. Catering dried up. I wondered if there was somewhere else and wondered how long until the rest of the country wondered if there was somewhere else. Everyone said it was all Bush's fault, but he didn't have enough sense for it to be all his fault. The world wanted to blow us up. Someone blow me up, I thought. I just wanted to disappear more than anything. I was so far behind on rent, I didn't think winning the lottery could pay it off. Mecca went to the bathroom. I opened the window. Outside, restaurant supply and lighting stores floundered alongside bars and the wild frontier remnants of Bowery bums and SROs. In the 1700s, the Bowery sprawled with green. Giant bugs swam through the marshland. Natives hunted. Europeans came to see what's what. Natives became red. Europeans became white. Everyone saw the colors of the faces instead of the colors of the land. The swamps dried up and the buildings built up. People died. People were born. They died. Bugs survived. I flicked one into the frontier. A little girl looked up and flipped me off. Mecca approached from behind, sniffing my hair. I moved to the futon. He got another cake. Hey, so, do you remember how I told you that sometimes I go to that place in Midtown? Well, I talked to the owner. She needs help and you need rent. Help at the poker game? Like serving drinks? Or dealing cards? Yeah, well, funny thing is, there's no poker. It's pussy. It's an in-call service. My laughter offended Mecca. It's not funny. Sorry, I never realized you were that lonely. He shrugged. It's not loneliness. It's convenience. You keep turning me down and you know a man like me has needs. Don't piss me off. I just bought you groceries and gave you money and didn't even ask you to jerk it or anything. Right. I should be thankful. It's in a big duplex-style apartment on the first floor of a gated brownstone. Very safe. She needs someone to book clients. You're a receptionist, so why not? Oh, yes, well, I moved here to be a receptionist, you know. Everyone knows artists need day jobs before hitting it big, and you'd only work a few shifts a week. The rest of your days are free to paint. The money's great. You can buy art supplies. All the girls tip the bookers. Some of the clients do too. I do. Just meet the owner. So I did. Star. 2 days later, I met Tiffany's Diamond at a Mexican place in Hell's Kitchen. Her skin reminded me of an avocado. She spewed guacamole when she spoke, which was often. You know how it is. Us career women can't trust small-time bitches with the books, plus we gotta watch our men. Jesus, ain't it awful? How many times did one of my true loves spend my money, then turn around and tell me to fuck someone for more? Glad I run things now. I really did not have a reply for that, so sipped my beer, hoping a nod and a smile sufficed. Cops and politicians are some of my best clients. I have top-notch security, too. You'll be safe. Coming in as a phone girl shows initiative, and if you want, you can take some clients, too. You got a not-so-hard look that men like for the girlfriend requests. All my girls look like whores that have a side job as gladiators, though you and I both know a man will fuck this here burrito if nothing else is around, she said, bean juice dripping down her chin. Just keep it in mind. For now, I'll show you how to know who's a legit client and who's not. If you keep things classy, you know, keep the towels and soap stocked so the girls can wash their pussies, you'll get along just fine. She smiled, trying to use one of the tortilla chips as a toothpick, then ate it. That might be the moment I decided that I hated her. Tiffany's Diamond, a hooker without a heart of gold. Star. She used an intercom for clients, and they had to provide a password after buzzing the apartment. The work was okay for a while, but I kept wondering about that somewhere else. When I realized that she didn't use cameras, and she didn't plan on replacing the security guy she fired for eating her leftover guacamole, I decided to rob her. I knew where she kept the cash. I knew where she kept her guns and knives. I knew Mecca would help me because his first-generation parents were tired of his antics. They worked hard. None of us did. Star, Mecca, and I waited by the gate for someone to exit. Then we waited for someone else to come out of the building. We acted like we'd been looking for a key, then walked in, sliding ski masks over our heads as we approached the door. When one of the girls brought out the garbage, we forced our way in, shoving everyone into a bedroom. Tiffany's reached under the couch cushion for her gun. I knew the gun wasn't there because I moved all the weapons the last time I worked. Mecca shoved everyone into a bedroom and told them sit on the floor, heads down, while I emptied out the cash from the hiding spots. I had to keep an eye on Mecca too, because he was so nervous that he forgot to pack 2 helmets. The gun shook in his hand. We had agreed not to talk. Then he talked, and even worse, he said my name. Let's go, Lori. I knew Tiffany's heard him. As we ran out the door, she said, I will blow off their fucking heads. But we had her guns, and we were gone. Star. I never said anything to Mecca about saying my name. There was no time. I hoped he didn't know. I hoped he died a hero in his own mind. He thought he was helping me, and he died thinking I'd show him around California. And honestly, it was my day off. And I'm pretty short, so it's not like it would be that hard for even Tiffany's to figure out I was behind one of the ski masks. So there I sat, everything done poorly, planning a new life. The sunlight bouncing off an illegal cable hookup on a roof across the street got my attention. Soon, such second-rate sunsets would be a memory. I decided to shower. California, here I come, right back where I never started from. I sang to myself, painting on the beach, working in a bar. It could be good for me. Gonna do it right this time, I thought. The thought didn't last. A sharp whistle pierced the air. It sounded like a piano falling in a cartoon. I ran to the window. Traffic lights blinked. People screamed. On the sidewalk, a man and woman cowered. "What was that?" the woman said. "We should call 911, he replied. "I'm calling. Are you calling? My call's not going through. It's September 11th again." "My phone works. Besides, it's August. Can't be September 11th. Then it's August 14th. August 14th is the new September 11th. An old man stumbled off a stoop. "I got a weather radio. It's a power outage. Other cities got hit too. I'd rather go through 9/11 again. At least I didn't lose my window unit then. It's 900 degrees, and I gotta listen to you monkey fuckers." A woman walked toward the old man. "You sick son of a bitch. My mother died in the first tower." "Aw, I got a dead mother too. Typhoid fever epidemic of 1812. The arguing continued, but I had no time for it. I wished I could take a plane, but they would be backed up for hours now, and all the 9/11 security made them too risky anyway. A power outage meant no subway and a cab nightmare. Maybe I could hitch a ride to Port Authority and just wait for the buses to start rolling again. I had already robbed someone and watched Mecca die. Hitchhiking was the least of my worries. Still, I had left the guns with Mecca. Suddenly, my landline rang. Hello. I keep saying that cell phones are just a fad. Look, here I am calling you from a payphone during a blackout while everyone else is jamming up the towers. People act like those things are something, but mark my word, they'll be gone by 2007. There's nothing else you can do with them but listen to them fail during an emergency. Cigarette smoke never sounded so serious. That was odd to me, as that serious sound was coming from a woman who reminded me of an avocado. But I knew I was in trouble. Is it in a suitcase, bus, or train? I always wondered why you never got any new clothes with all the money I paid. Now I know it wasn't enough. You got greedy tastes. You're a fine one to talk. All the money you make, you still look like Jersey. Jersey's got rents and restaurants just like the city. Sometimes they're better than what you find here. Matter of fact, I just went out there to replace some hardware. The people I know in Jersey got great hardware. And now that my favorite Sopranos extra has driven back to the city with me, a blackout hits. Our hardware works great in a blackout, though. How did you get this number? The question should really be whether or not I shoot that old man who keeps screaming about his air conditioner before or after I shoot you. The phone went dead. Kneeling under the window, I scanned the street and saw Tiffany's standing by the payphone next to the bodega with her hair blowing like straw in the breeze. A guy who actually did look like an extra on The Sopranos got out of a black sedan. Tiffany's had the nerve to put out her cigarette, then chew on an ice cream cone as they crossed the Bowery to kill me. I grabbed a knife and stood to the right of the door, unlocking it slowly. I cracked it just enough to see what was what. For the first time in a long time, I felt hungry. It took a while, but heavy pants finally echoed up the stairs. "Why do you always have to hire people that live in 6th floor walk-ups?" the man said, leaning on the banister. "Good God, I can't kill anyone until I catch my breath," Tiffany said. I flung open the door with the blade down and plunged the knife into the extra's back. He tumbled down the stairs. I turned and came face to face with that ice cream cone. Only then did I realize I needed 2 knives. Killing isn't as easy as it looks in the movies or even on the news. It requires planning to do it well. Tiffany's didn't even have her gun out, and she was dumb enough to warn me she was coming. But living as I live now, I know that the criminal mastermind is a thing of fiction. Most criminals suffer from egos, not masterminds. Crime or life just comes down to thinking you can take and eat and move on. I decided that I was ready to move on and find out about that somewhere else. I shoved her against the wall. White powder glistened on the edge of her nostril. The ice cream fell to the floor, which probably infuriated her more than anything. She growled. I growled, sinking my teeth into her nose. Her nails pierced my scalp. I pulled back and wrapped my hands around her neck, then squeezed until she died. Maybe I should say more after all these years, but that's how I think of it, because I can't think about it. I ran back into the apartment and grabbed the money and bag. I realized that I needed something to help carry them because of the blackout, so I grabbed my mini grocery cart. If I could roll a mini grocery cart from the Bowery to Port Authority, I could find that somewhere else. I told myself to put 1 foot forward. I didn't look at the extra when I passed him in the hallway. I just kept moving. Manhattan's easy to walk, I thought. The blackout won't last forever. I can disappear, I told myself, wiping sweat from my eyes. All I have to do is endure one hell of a bus ride with a few stops in between. Around 6th and 8th, a bodega owner stood in front of his bodega, passing out all sorts of goodies. He waved a can of beer and a sandwich at me. "Where are you going?" "I'm disappearing," I said. "How wonderful for you. Here, you have to take something. I can't run the register or anything. Just take it." Other bodega owners did the same thing, so when the buses started rolling again, I did ride drunk. I managed to disappear from everyone but myself. I have moved so many times, looking for some place. Wherever I go, I waft in with a look like a girlfriend and leave a stench like garbage. Found you. Grandma is dying, but she has lived a long and good life. At the age of 97, she was in remarkably good shape until a cancer diagnosis 3 months ago. She made it clear from the start that she didn't want to fight it. No chemo, no radiation, no surgeries. Just keep me comfortable and let me die in my own home, was all she asked. My sister, Lori, and I were supposed to be taking turns staying with her in her house, but Lori works a lot. I am basically staying here full time. Fortunately, my job is a remote research position. Grandma was skeptical when I told her that I could work from home, or from her house, or wherever I happened to be. For her, a job is a place to go every day, not something you can do just by opening up your laptop. I set up a makeshift office at her dining room table. After working in silence for a few hours, I decide to check on Grandma. Sure enough, she is asleep in her room. I have noticed that she is sleeping more and has more episodes of confusion. Hospice comes by once a day to check her vitals, see if she needs more meds, and let us know how she is doing. I begin to think about my grandma's life, the life that is about to end. I need to think about that, about the obituary anyway. I begin making some notes. Born Annie Lee Morton in 1928 to Deborah and Leroy Morton, she grew up in Smith County. At the age of 16, she got a job at the snack counter at the old Songbird drugstore. It was there she met John Joseph Lane, or JoJo as everyone called him. They married in 1950 and welcomed a son in 1955. Mrs. Lane went on to move to Livingston. She began a job with the Renault Insurance Agency as a secretary in 1964, where she worked until her retirement in 2002. In her retirement, Mrs. Lane remained active with the local theater, as a library volunteer, and with local charities. Many in the community remember her warmly. She was preceded in death by her son, Jacob Lane, several years ago. She is survived by his daughters, Lori and Maddie Lane. I stare at the notes in front of me. I can't believe that is all there is. After 97 years, there should be more. I look out the window. The backyard is filled with dry brown leaves. My grandmother always kept everything so tidy, and the yard was no exception. Until the cancer, she raked those leaves herself. If she looks out her bedroom window, she will see how neglected the yard is, I think. I retrieve the rake from the backyard shed, and I think about the short obituary. The truth is that Grandma's life had one big black hole. It was the void left by her husband and my grandfather, John Joseph Lane, or Jojo as everyone called him. My dad died in a car accident when I was 9. I then developed a burning curiosity to find out everything about his life and his family. My mother had packed away most of my father's things. I looked through them and found them lacking in giving me any clue about who he really was. So, when I spent time with my grandma, I looked to her for information. I rummaged through my father's old room, and that was where I first found pictures of my dad's father, Jojo. Grandma always spoke highly of Jojo. He was a good father, a good husband. They were in love and happy. My dad, as a boy, had adored Jojo. What happened to him? I remembered asking Grandma. Did he die? She was in her 70s then, but had the face of a younger woman. Her smile faded away, and her eyes became serious. He left one day, she said. But where did he go? I pressed on. At the age of 9, I didn't understand the concept of separation, abandonment, or heartbreak. I don't know, honey. You see, he had lost his job, and we were struggling, she explained. Sometimes, I think he just, maybe went off somewhere and decided to disappear. I remember being shocked and horrified at the prospect. As a child, I didn't know that people could just vanish, except for kids who were stolen. But adults? Never were they supposed to disappear. After that, I never asked any more pointed questions about Jojo, but sometimes Grandma would make a remark that would give me a snippet of information. His favorite meal was meatloaf with mashed potatoes, peas, and yeast rolls. He was a good dancer. When my grandma was pregnant, Jojo knew it was going to be a boy. He was so excited to have a son. Then he left when my dad was 8 years old. It made no sense. I had asked my mom about the whole situation later on. She just shrugged. According to my dad, he fell asleep one night, and the next morning Jojo was gone. I think of this as I rake the leaves into piles. I start at the perimeter of the yard, and I am working my way to the center. I am out of shape, and am starting to sweat in spite of the cool temperature. One last drag of the rake across the ground, and I am going to go in and rest. I cannot believe my 97-year-old grandmother raked these leaves. My thoughts are interrupted when I realize that the rake is stuck on something. I can't seem to pull it toward me, so I lift it up, and that is when I see that the rake is tangled with a leather strap. Bending down, pushing the leaves and grass away, I realize that the strap is connected to something that is buried. I pull harder on the strap, and I feel something give way, but it is deep. Retrieving a small garden trowel from the shed, I dig until I can make out the top of a leather bag. After a few minutes of pulling and digging, I get the item out. It is an old leather purse, stiff, scratched and caked with mud. The clasp on top is an old clasp, the kind with two metal pieces that wrap around each other and make a snap sound when they are forced closed. It is rusty, but after some effort, I manage to pry the purse open. Looking down into the black plastic lining, I see that the purse is empty, except for a bundle wrapped in wax paper. The paper is brittle when I unfold it. Inside, I find a large brown stained envelope, and within it another smaller envelope. I open it to find even more wax paper, and finally a thick bundle of folded notebook paper tied with string. I untie the string and open the paper. It seems to be a letter of some kind. The first page has only one sentence. "Dear Jojo, I am so sorry," is written in my grandma's precise cursive script. At that moment, I hear a car pull into the driveway in front of the house. The hospice aide is here. I feel panicked. I go into the house, stopping in the kitchen. For some reason, I feel as if no one should see me with these papers. I tuck everything underneath the kitchen sink before I open the front door to greet the hospice aide. Grandma wakes when we enter her bedroom. She is confused when she sees the aide put the blood pressure cuff around her upper arm. "What are you doing?" she snaps at the aide. The aide's name tag says Lavana. She smiles at my grandma. "I'm just checking on you, Miss Lane, just kicking the tires and looking under the hood." My grandma laughs. "I think my transmission is going," she says. We all laugh. "Maybe so, but your motor is still running, Grandma," I tell her. After Lavana has left, I put on the kettle and take some warm chamomile tea up to the bedroom, but Grandma has already gone back to sleep. It won't be long now, I think. I pull the papers out from under the sink. I look at that first page again. "Dear Jojo, I am so sorry." I flip to the next page to read on. My grandmother's handwriting was unmistakable. Date: Monday, November 25th, 1963. Jojo, you are gone. I know where you are, and I cannot tell anyone, and I cannot keep it in. So I will tell the pages. Only the pages will know. I will write this. I will bury it deep, deep in the ground, deep in me. Jojo lost his job 3 months ago. He was working for Wilhelm's Furniture. He had been there for years. But then the owner died and the place shut down, laid everyone off. At first we weren't worried. But then, when Jojo started trying to find work, he couldn't. No one was hiring. Not the factories, not the stores. Then, we got behind on rent. The landlord said he would work with us, but then the gas bill went unpaid and got turned off. It was getting colder. I dressed in layers. I dressed our boy in layers. I scraped together meals of salt and pepper and butter and rice. Finally, we got into a fight. I told Jojo. He was no kind of man, no kind of father, that couldn't even feed his child, couldn't even keep him warm. Jojo, I will never forget your face when you left that night. I looked up for a moment. So there had been an argument, but that hardly explained the fact that Jojo was never seen or heard from again. I flipped to the third page, hoping to find answers. Grandma had written this page later. Date: Wednesday, November 26th, 1963. Jojo, you came back. You left, but you came back, and you had money. A big wad of cash. It looked funny. It was smeared with something, and then I realized that it was blood, and you were bleeding from your side, but you said it was nothing. You told me to hide the money, use a bit of it to buy food and pay the gas bill and rent, but hide the rest. Then you said you had to leave. Jojo, you said you were going to go to our cave, the one we used to go to when we were courting. You would be back in a few days. If anyone asked, I was to say that you were out of town, looking for work, and that you would be back, but you never came back. Within the handwritten pages was a newspaper clipping. It was about a robbery of a tavern 2 counties away. I read the clipping carefully, suspecting what it had to do with Jojo. The headline was big and bold in all capital letters. Robbery gone wrong. 1 dead, money missing. Officials are still trying to piece together what happened at Big Al's Tavern On the night of November 23rd, 1963, the tavern was reportedly not very busy, and the last customer who left at midnight reported seeing the owner, Al Harvey, cleaning the counter as he usually did at closing time. The next morning, Big Al would be dead on the floor of the tavern, and a trail of blood led out the door. Unfortunately, it was impossible to track further because of heavy rain during the night and early morning hours. Eyewitness accounts state that a man in a red-checked shirt was seen running into the woods behind the tavern. So Jojo, desperate to provide for his family, had committed a robbery. It was almost heroic, but I couldn't push away the grim thought that he had somehow killed a man in the process. Looking down into the bundle of paper, I see another newspaper clipping. Big Al put up a fight. Sheriff Ernest Glenn stated in an interview that officers have been able to figure out what probably happened during the robbery at Big Al's Tavern on the fateful night of November 23rd, just one day after the assassination of our president. While the nation was in mourning, someone entered Big Al's just after closing to rob the tavern. Big Al was no pushover, however, and had other plans for the perpetrator. From the amount of blood spilled, it looked as if the unknown assailant was stabbed deeply, at least once. Unfortunately, Big Al was injured during the struggle and died of a head injury sustained when fell and hit the wooden bar top on the way down. Sheriff Glenn made this statement: "Wherever the assailant is, he will be looking for a hospital. He is going to have to get patched up somewhere. We will find him. It doesn't matter if Al died from the fall. We will be looking at murder charges." The next page was dated Friday, December 6th, 1963. It was written in Grandma's handwriting. "Dear Jojo, I went to the cave. I know you told me to wait, but I went to the cave where we used to go, where we spent so many hours talking with each other, loving each other. I found you there, my darling. At first I was relieved to see you, sitting against the wall. Then I saw the blood that had poured out of you, your eyes unseeing, your skin marble cold, and there you were in front of me, and gone at the same time. I will tell no one. I love you, and I will tell no one what you did or where you are. Goodbye, my love." After that, she had written one more thing: $5,576. I guess that must have been how much Jojo had gotten from the robbery. I was stunned. It was all here, the solution to our family mystery. Jojo had committed a robbery to keep his family fed and warm. A fight between him and the owner of the business ensued. Jojo was seriously injured. The other man was killed in the struggle. Jojo managed to make it home, give Grandma the money, and take refuge in a cave, where he died of his injuries. Upstairs, I hear my grandma stirring. I hide the papers underneath the couch cushion and run upstairs. She is out of bed and so confused. I need to get to work. She tells me. "Where?" I ask. She is impatient with me. "The drugstore, silly. Who are you anyway?" "I'm your granddaughter, Maddie," I answer. She laughs. "I don't have a granddaughter. I'm only 18. I realize that her mind is somewhere back in time, before the tragedy of Jojo. "Do you have a boyfriend?" I ask slyly. Grandma smiles again. "His name is Jojo. He is so handsome. He takes me courting in the cave behind the old Myers farm sometimes. We can be alone there." Then the smile fades. "Where am I?" she asks. I tell her she is home and I help her back to the bed. That is the last time she speaks. Grandma dies the next night. I hide the letters at my own apartment and never tell anyone about them. It took me a few days looking through old property records to figure out where the old Myers farm had been. A mall sits there now, but it is long since closed and abandoned. The woods behind it are still intact. I waited for the weather to warm up and decided to hike out there. I found the cave. There was graffiti and a bit of trash near the entrance. Inside, it was dark and cool. It went deep into the side of the mountain. I had brought a long spool of fishing line, attached it to a tree outside, and unwound it as I walked deeper into the dark abyss. I didn't know how big it was, and I didn't want to lose my way. I moved my flashlight through the dark, and when I saw nothing, I kept walking. Then I noticed a shaft of sunlight coming through a crack in the rocks. I walked toward this light and found myself in a separate chamber. At first I thought it was empty too. Then I spotted the still human figure sitting propped against a large boulder. The bones of Jojo Lane still sit. He still wears the black cowboy boots, the blue jeans, and red checked button-up shirt he put on one morning in November of 1963. The skull grins and a skeletal hand is reaching out toward me. I kneel and look at the empty eye sockets. "Found you," I say. Jojo doesn't reply. I sit with my grandfather for a while. The cave is still. The sunlight begins to fade. I reach over to hold the skeletal hand. I think long and hard what to do. Should I alert the police? Should I make an anonymous report? Should I tell my sister and my mom? Then I realize I don't have to decide today. He has been here for decades. A few more years won't hurt. I will leave me alone for now. As I rise from the floor of the cave, I can almost feel him looking at me. I turn around, half expecting him to animate, to tell me not to go yet. The skeleton still sits, expecting nothing, asking nothing. I tell Jojo goodbye and turn to follow my fishing line through the dark cave and back into the present, leaving Jojo to sit where the past had left him, liability and legato. When the police forcibly entered 43-year-old Paulina Fiore's apartment, they found her lifeless body on the floor of the kitchen, covered in mysterious bruises. The lead detective immediately suspected homicide and ordered an autopsy. But after extensive analysis, the coroner concluded the cause of death was vitamin C deficiency. In a video appearing on social media, Stephanie Brolo, who sources confirm is a close friend of Paulina, is seen weeping and uttering, "This is all my fault." At the offices of my city's largest newspaper, I sip my third espresso of the morning and finish writing the story. One coffee per story is a good rule to live by. I wish I could teach this to new journalists, but they have their own ways of doing things. After I finish my third random fatality write-up of the morning, I announce, I'm sick of tabloid journalism, to the newsroom, to no one in particular. The young writers around me ignore me. In the economic downturn in traditional media, they are happy to simply hold a job. Giuseppe, our new chief editor, says articles with a topic of either sex or death receive 10 times more clicks than any other. The editorial concepts in his head are as blunt as the sales method of a fish seller in the market. I need to endure another month of ambulance chasing until I can focus on another piece of investigative journalism. My lengthy expose of government corruption last month, which filled half the front page of the print edition, received fewer views online than a weekend car crash or a nightclub brawl. Max? Giuseppe is standing in front of my desk. Why haven't you interviewed the friend yet? Friend? Friend of whom? Idiot. The "it's all my fault" friend. Young, attractive, trending online. Giuseppe says this with his voice rising in volume for each word. Stephanie Brolo. I show Giuseppe my memory, for detail is flawless. I didn't study political science to chase after friends of murder victims and suicides. Do it. He turns around and and stomps off. Halfway across the newsroom, he turns back and shouts, "Vitamin C. Focus on the vitamin C. Nutrition stories are good for our advertisers, Max." Several reporters type notes into their mobiles. Even an untrained eye can foresee them proposing all types of vitamin stories in tomorrow's news meeting. I dial the friend. "This is Max Serafino. Is this Bianca?" "Yes," a female voice says, and hesitates. "Are you with the police?" "Number I'm with the..." I say the name of the newspaper. With a 137-year history, the name often opens doors. "I thought the police would be the first to call. What do you want?" The police in Italy would never bother with something as trivial as a comment on social media, unless a politician or celebrity was involved. "I'd like to clarify what you said in the viral video on Italia app. I mention Italy's largest social media app. That video is ruining my life," Bianca says. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Well, everyone misunderstood what I said. I didn't have anything to do with Paulina's death. She stopped going out and looked thinner 6 months ago. Maybe I started her in this direction." She catches her breath. "I only called her twice after she stopped seeing me. I should have tried harder, gone to her home." "Yes? It's all too much," she says. "Thanks for calling me, but sorry. I don't know who you are." Abruptly, the mobile screen turns red. She disconnects the WhatsApp call and goes offline. "Good work on the Paulina interview." Giuseppe reaches over and picks up one of my antique pencils and massages it between his fingers. "No problem, boss." I managed to knit the meager information I was given into a piece about a heartbroken friend and a substantial essay about eating disorders. "Nice pencil." He studies the Castelli wooden pencil quixotically. "Max, you are 10 years too old for this newsroom, but you are a cat that always lands on its feet." "The Tiger of Turin?" I propose. "I'll accept that as a byline. An important-sounding moniker is the best I can hope for these days. I recall the Elysian days of being flown to Rome to interview government ministers, back when traditional newspapers collected all the advertising revenue instead of Google. When assigned a story, one of the first duties a beat reporter checks off is to contact the family members. I locate Paulina's father on social media and send an introduction. "This is Max Serafino, a reporter with the Turin Register. I'm writing an article about the unfortunate incident with your daughter and would like to ensure I have all details correct. Please contact me at your earliest convenience." I receive a reply which appears to be copied and pasted. "We have nothing to say. Do not contact us again. The Fiore family." I move on to another breaking story, and the Paulina story goes quiet in the newsroom of the Turin Register for several days. "Max, line 7! Someone shouts. I answer, "City desk, Max Serafino." "This is Paulina Fiore's father," a man says. "Our daughter. It's all our fault. We saw how much time she was spending on her mobile and never stopped her. I'm sure it's not your fault, but I would like to hear more," I say. "Is there a reason you decided to call me today?" The police unlocked her phone and asked us questions about the websites she was looking at. "Do you remember any of the names?" "I don't know. I've never heard of any of them," he said. "But most of the articles were about diseases. Was she in contact with anyone?" They did say she received the links from friends on the Italia app. Judging by reports from neighbors, Paulina has not been outside for months. The friends must be online ones. I call Professor Rizzo at the University of Turin. Could fear about disease, viruses, and bacteria, and so on cause a patient to suffer from malnutrition? I ask. Mysophobia, commonly called germophobia, can cause a patient to avoid touching food, to eat with gloves, that sort of thing. In problem cases, it may cause patients to limit social interaction and avoid public places. Paulina appeared to be living on a diet of boiled pasta. That sounds possible, but I've never heard of malnutrition even in the most extreme cases of mysophobia. Hunger, including a desire for a mixed diet, is stronger than almost any other psychological urge. But isn't the urge to survive even stronger? I conjecture, trying to imagine what the existential threat could be. How could Paulina completely avoid something so widespread as vitamin C? I update the chief editor on my progress on the case. This has the workings of a good human interest story. Food, fear, a female victim. Giuseppe looks satisfied. Keep digging, but steer clear from anything negative about Italia app. They deliver 30% of our incoming traffic. I am on speaking terms with many people in our city. People love to talk about themselves to someone who is actively listening, especially if they perceive them to be in a position of authority. After graduating university together, Bruno went on a different, more international path than I. Having worked for 15 years in Silicon Valley, he returned to our hometown and was soon snapped up by Italy's largest social media company. A glimpse at a life I could have lived. I canceled dinner with my girlfriend Gabriel to set up a cozy dinner with a 41-year-old man. On a clear, dry evening as dusk descends over Turin, as it sits in its valley between the towering Italian Alps on one side and the rolling hills that rise up from the Po River on the other, I walk toward the rectangular bulk of iron lattice that is the old Fiat factory in Lingato on the south side of the city. The factory, almost a kilometer long, has transformed into offices and a ground floor shopping mall. Now it's popular with high-tech startups, many from America, France, and Germany. The building that was the epicenter of the city when Turin produced half the automobiles of Europe is now filled with people trying to figure out how to sell discount handbags through e-commerce. At least the people of Turin are no longer destined for a life of hard labor as previous generations were. Paulina lived not far from this building. At the Osteria del Fiat, I've asked for a quiet table. I'm disappointed when the host leads us to a very crowded dining room. We pass a large room with only one table of guests. In the circle of suited men, I recognize a retired local politician. In the dark recesses of the city, the power brokers don't like to be overheard. An hour later, after we have finished our own dinner, Bruno takes a large swig of the dolcetto d'alba we have been drinking. The obligatory pleasantries and the exchange of information about shared friends has been completed, and we can move on to the real meat of the dinner. I explain how Paulina had been accessing his employer's app over 50 times a day. At Italia app, we focus on returning traffic. Some readers we enchant with glamour. Others we addict with fear. Isn't that manipulation? We are giving people what they want. If they want to hate, they will find it. If they want to love, they will find that too. What about promoting democracy and humanitarian values? That's just rhetoric for university students. You know that. Paulina Fiore died after gorging on fake news sent to her by Italia app. It's not our fault that someone can't handle online news. If we don't send it to them, someone else will. You have become very American in your thinking, I point out. It's disappointing my old friend can't see the world the same way we used to, but I've become resigned to accept people's differences, politically or otherwise. The police seem very interested in her social media history, I add. Bruno looks at me with renewed interest. Have the police opened an investigation? Maybe her death is not a tally app's fault. Maybe it's the people who write the fake news. If you can send me her browsing history, the one the police are going through, I'll take a look and put some spotlight on the fake news producers. That might keep you one step ahead in reacting to negative coverage. I'll keep your name out of it, of course. I'll think about it. Bruno focuses on his red wine glass. Bruno and I may not see eye to eye, but we have enough shared history to trust we will protect each other's best interests. The next afternoon, I receive Paulina's browsing history via an encrypted messaging app. I start clicking through the links. Italy's continuing flood of illegal immigrants. How COVID rises up through ventilation shafts. The 7 ways elevator buttons spread disease. Paparazzi capture pictures of Italy's first monkeypox patient. Vegetables in our supermarkets picked by immigrants inundated with monkeypox virus. I scan through months of links about deadly diseases and ways to avoid them. Fake news is a problem, and the government has been trying to combat it. In the thousands of links I scan through, my heart flutters as I spot our name. Don't trust what the government says about monkeypox. See attached articles from the Turin Register. Clicking the link, I see a list of familiar headlines. The dark hand behind the government reshuffle. Max Serafino. Patient malpractice allegations covered up by health authorities. Max Serafino. Pandemic recommendations. Misguided. Max Serafino. Corruption exposed in Turin government. Max Serafino. Other articles Paulina was reading, those not to trust doctors and government health advice, often link to articles written by me and my colleagues. I stare at the pencil that sits on my desk where Giuseppe left it earlier. Behind me, I hear someone approach and feel their hands on my shoulders. Giuseppe's voice says, "And you thought you were superior to all of us, didn't you? Is it all?" I am about to ask an obvious question, but stop myself. I have bills to pay and a scarcity of other work alternatives. I sweep pointless self-doubt from my mind. Journalists report the news. We do not generate it. With a click of the mouse, I bring up today's police bulletin and make proposals on which events we might cover for our prestigious 137-year-old newspaper to the chief editor. The next morning, a young journalist who normally sits beside me struts triumphantly through the newsroom greeting colleagues. Giuseppe gives him a thumbs up. I open the Turin Register's most viewed list, an online article. Clickbait news causes scurvy in Italy's auto capital is trending across the nation. I begin having regular dinners with Bruno. We talk about our old adventures in school and about the state of the country. Bruno reminds me that a political science professor in university had taught us, every industry is selling a product, and at its core, the news industry sells fear. In the coming months, the number of cases of malnutrition, similar to Paulina's snowball across the nation. I notice Bruno starts to eat more and more. I have lost my appetite. Tokyo smoke. Possible triggers: intimidation, slight, mention of drugs in the trial. She flicked the wheel of the lighter. Sparks shot up, followed by a small flame which she held to the end of the cigarette dangling from between her lips. Talk. You've got about 5 minutes to convince me to let you live. In that case, mind if I have a cigarette too? That's executioner etiquette, isn't it? Or is that just Hollywood? Just Hollywood, she said, but offered me her pack of cigarettes with her free hand just the same. Her other hand, the one hidden from view inside her jacket, pointed a gun at me. Not of the Hollywood variety. This was a Nambu M57. It would get the job done. Time's ticking. She pulled back the hammer for emphasis. The clicking sent a shiver through my entire being, commanding every single hair to stand at attention. "Would you believe me if I said I did it because I love you?" I asked, a futile attempt at lightening the mood. The strange thing, though, was that I meant it. Even then, as I looked at her, knowing full well she'd kill me once the smoldering tip of her cigarette reached the filter. "Really, Takashi, you did it because you love me. My dad is in jail, Mom's awaiting trial for complicity, and Itsuki is awaiting whether he'll be behind bars for 5 years or 27. I thought you liked Itsuki." "I did, but you didn't," I said, while I tried to light the cigarette I kept in the corner of my mouth. It was true. Although I didn't like him at first, he became much like a brother rather than just an in-law after we got married. I didn't look at her as I said it. I was staring at the graffiti frog that had made its appearance on the wall across the train tracks 2 weeks ago. But I knew the face she was giving me. I remembered every line that appeared on her usually smooth skin. "You always complained about how he badmouths you to your dad at every opportunity he got. It's the only reason he was going to take over the company. You're smarter, more experienced, and more ambitious than he was or ever would be. It should have been you, and you know it. As for your da..." "Stop. As for your dad, Hina, he chewed it up," I continued. "All of it." She poked me with the barrel of the gun to let me know who was in charge here. "That's no reason to have them locked up." True, it wasn't, but it was convenient. For years, even before we got married, she had been complaining about all of them. Her dad most of all. Ever since she was a little girl, she had been preparing to take over her father's company when eventually the time would come. She made sure she got the best grades all throughout primary and middle school. Even at university, she had always been at the top of her class, while on the weekend, she inspected contracts for business deals and saved the company millions by spotting hidden clauses. But none of that mattered. Once Itsuki was born, it was all her dad had cared about. I took a deep drag of my cigarette. Marlboro Gold. I always hated lights. They miss that slight scratching sensation when you inhale. Isn't it though? 5 years ago, during Christmas, when your dad announced that Itsuki would take over your position as CEO, you said you never wanted to see any of them ever again. I didn't mean that. Then you didn't mean it either when you repeated it after he gave you the opportunity to develop your skills elsewhere, for your birthday, I suppose? She was angrily fingering her cigarette, flicking of ash that wasn't there. I could only hope she was a little more careful with the trigger. I still had 3 minutes left after all. "Mind if I get something from the vending machine?" I asked. Last meal and all that. I got up before she could give me an answer and walked over to the overpriced candy dispenser. I fumbled in my pocket for my wallet that wasn't there. "Can I borrow a 500 yen piece, hon?" She didn't move, just raised an eyebrow. "Fine." I looked around, but of course there was nobody around at this hour. The parking lot was empty, but for 4 cars. I turned a quarter turn and forced my elbow through the glass. "Ah, motherfucker. That looks a lot less painful in the movies." I took 3 packs of Pocky from the machine, careful not to cut my hand on the sharp edges. Strawberry, matcha, and the regular ones. I wasn't sure which ones you liked best. I thought strawberry, but it could have been matcha as well. "Anyway, here's both," I said, and sat back down on the hood of my beat-up Honda Odyssey. She didn't try to take any when I offered the box to her, just took another drag of her cigarette, which was reaching the halfway mark by now. I always liked the original best myself. I took a drag of my own cigarette before taking it from my mouth and taking a bite of 4 of the chocolate-covered sticks at once. Disgusting. I still don't get it. How can you eat and smoke at the same time? I lifted my shoulders in answer and swallowed before blowing out the smoke I'd been holding up in the air to be carried off by the wind. I never had a problem with eating and smoking at the same time. I knew many people who did, though. Back to what I was saying, I did it for us. In return for the evidence about the shipments of cocaine I gave to Nasanto Corp., they offered me 1 billion yen. 1 billion, Hina. You'd be rid of your family. We could both quit our jobs and move somewhere else. We'd never have to work again. Tell me that doesn't sound like a dream. You wouldn't have to teach at the high school anymore. No more overtime and compulsory socializing with colleagues. Isn't that what you always wanted? Not like this. They are still my family. And how do you think this will look for me? With my family name ruined? I'll be seen as the daughter of some drugs cartel. My parents weren't like that. They didn't even know about it. The arms of the gold-plated station clock twitched. 10:35. The dial was beautifully decorated with the image of a sun that, in the morning, reflected the sunlight so brilliantly that it seemed to shine itself. Now it was barely visible at all. True, that was on Itsuki, but none of that would have happened if you'd been in charge. Besides, your dad will be out in, 3 years? Your mom's sentence will be even shorter. I doubt she'll even have to do any jail time at all. You just don't fucking get it, do you? You think that's the story the media is going to run with? That it was just my brother and the rest of us had nothing to do with it? Sure, I might not be seen as an accomplice, but I'm part of that family. You didn't ruin just them. You ruined all of us. Honestly, I didn't get it. Maybe it was because I'd never been close to my own family, or just because we were rich now and could go wherever we wanted. You took my last name when we married. No one will associate you with them once we move somewhere else. Where'd you want to go? Osaka, or maybe Kochi? You always loved the beach. Hell, we could even go to Europe. You pick a country, and we'll be on the next flight. My eyes were fixed on the entrance of the empty train station. One of the lights illuminating the statue a little to the left of the gates was flickering and drew my attention. It was a statue of a man, but I didn't recognize him. Over the past 6 years I've been coming here, I've never taken the time to read the plaque. You've got about 1 minute left, she said, inspecting the cigarette clutched between her fingers. I've got to say, you're doing a real bang-up job so far. The gun was still pressed in my side, but it didn't scare me as much anymore. It was just there. What would you like me to say? That I'll buy you the most beautiful jewelry, a nice car, a big house with a pool? We can have all that if you want, but you already know that. She let another gray cloud escape from her mouth as she nodded. Then she turned to look at me and gave me another look. Go on. We could have kids, a boat. She scoffed. Really? You think having kids will fix this? We tried having kids, remember? It didn't exactly work. We could always adopt them. You used to dream of having a boy and a girl. The boy had to be older, you always said. If we adopt them, you can make sure we get that. She let out a deep sigh. It's almost time, Takashi. Anything you want to say, I suggest you say it now. I took a drag of my cigarette as I thought it over. Your last words are hard to come up with on the spot. I took another drag while staring at the statue again. Who is the statue of? Takashi? Her tone was annoyed more than angry. She prodded me with the gun once more. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I looked back at her. Her eyes didn't have any emotion left in them. No love, no anger, no sadness. I still love you. I'd want those to be my last words. I still love you, I repeated. She shook her head. Then, right as she shot away the still smoldering cigarette butt, the 10:38 train drove into the station. I took a final drag of my cigarette and shot the butt ahead of me. That's my cue, sayonara. A life of regret. When Raj had stealthily installed the iSpy 200 Vision Plus device on his wife's prescription glasses 2 weeks ago, he had no idea the device would enable him to watch and hear from her perspective. In a way, relive her last day alive. It was this morning Raj had received the Blue Dart Courier with the pen drive containing the recording of the last day of Mira's life, her first and only day of wearing her glasses with the iSpy installed, just before the horrific car accident in which her car had been hit on the rear by another fast-moving vehicle. The police believed it to be a truck or a bus. Mira's Ford Endeavor had spiraled out of control and plunged into the river beside the road where she had drowned before she could be rescued. When her car had been pulled out, Raj had collected her things, including her glasses, and sent them to the technical facility of the iSpy Corporation in Mumbai, where the team had extracted the audio and video recorded on the device and mailed the file to Raj on a pen drive along with a hefty check for their services. Taking a deep breath, Raj poured himself a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, which also happened to be Mira's favorite wine, for he needed his courage for what he was about to do. 3 large gulps and soothing warmth in his throat equipped him the nerve to plug in the pen drive and click on the folder dated July 24th, 2021. Wondering what their 16-year-old daughter Hina would think of this blatant breach of his wife's privacy, Raj pressed the play key. The world came into focus with dainty hands with black painted fingernails, placing the glasses over a nose. The camera panned to the left and focused on the other side of the bed, where a portly man lay sleeping with his mouth slightly agape. Raj watched the laptop screen with his heart racing as Mira leaned closer and kissed his bearded face before wrapping her gown around her body and proceeding towards the bathroom. He paused and watched the affectionate gesture again, frowning. He must have been fast asleep because he didn't remember his wife kissing him in the past 3 months. Not since his near-fatal heart attack. Was there a corner of her heart that still loved him, even though she was cheating on him? Raj shrugged the thought away, and taking another sip of the wine, resumed playing the video. In the bathroom, Mira placed her glasses on the bathroom sink while she proceeded to undress and step into the shower. For a few moments, Raj hated himself for lowering the laptop screen. This wasn't why he was spying on his wife, and somewhere in his heart, he knew he was violating her privacy after she was dead, which made it worse. But then he lifted the screen once again to watch his wife bathing, still as glorious at 43 as she was 20 years ago when they had first met. Raj couldn't credit her genes for her fitness levels, for her two sisters were both overweight and looked 10 years older than their age. The credit was all Mira's. She loved swimming in the clubhouse and sweating it out in their backyard with her 10-kilogram kettlebell. With a twang of shame, Raj glanced at the tires of fat around his waist, which made it impossible to see his feet without leaning over. Maybe he deserved a wife who cheated on him. After all, he had completely let go of himself over the past 10 years. A factor, his doctor proclaimed, had contributed to Raj suffering a massive heart attack at 46, despite having no history of heart disease. Mira put on her glasses as she emerged from the bathroom and got dressed in a navy blue suit for her office meeting. Each Monday, she had a meeting with her boss, a man she detested but tolerated because it allowed her to provide for her family. As she combed her long, wavy hair and effortlessly styled them into a chignon, Raj caught his own reflection in the mirror on the bed behind her. A middle-aged, unshaven, unemployed man perched on the edge of the bed, wistfully watching his beautiful and successful wife, who was everything he wasn't. Did he feel resentful towards her? Was it her fault she had done well in her life, while he had simply failed at everything he tried? Was it love that still kept them together? Or was she only with him for the sake of their teenage daughter? "I'm going to be late today," she said, without glancing at her husband. Today's the last date for the submission of the RFP response, and Khanna would expect me to finish it before I finish my day. "How late?" he asked desolately. "Late," she said firmly, giving him an icy stare. "Eat your dinner if I'm not home by 8. I hope you can manage to feed yourself and Hina." It was more of a statement than a question. Raj heaved himself from the bed with much effort. "Let me get breakfast started. I'll eat in the office. Anyway, I can't eat anything before my Monday morning meeting, you know that." Through the camera, Raj saw his own sorry figure as Mira grabbed her purse and laptop bag and left the room without another word to him. She paused by their daughter's room and, after a perfunctory knock, opened the door and stepped in, closing the door behind her. Raj remembered sticking his ear to the door, eavesdropping on their conversation. But all he had heard were some muffled noises, as though they were deliberately trying to keep their voices down. It had started 2 months ago, when one night, Raj had woken up to find his wife's side of the bed empty, and loud, arguing noises coming from their daughter's room. As he had tiptoed to Hina's room, he heard his wife yelling, "Do you know how old you are? I'm 16. I'm not a child anymore. You're just 16. You're still a child. You cannot do this." "I can, and I will," the daughter had argued back. "I forbid you." And on and on. The argument had fired back and forth between mother and daughter until Raj had stepped into the room and both had frozen and then sputtered an apology for waking him up. Docilely, Hina had apologized to her mother, and Mira had embraced her daughter. But Raj had sensed that it was just a temporary ceasefire owing to his heart condition, and the real issue between mother and daughter was not yet resolved. When he had probed about the subject of the argument, both had dilly-dallied without giving him the truth. While he appreciated their concern for his health, Raj wanted to be part of important discussions affecting their daughter and wasn't happy with being left out. Now he watched keenly as Mira stood facing their daughter, Hina, who was still in bed, as it was early for school. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mira said warmly. Hina, a scrawny 16-year-old girl with crazy curly hair, mumbled a good morning from under the covers. "I was leaving for office. I wanted to talk to you before I go," said Mira, sitting on the edge of the bed. Hina sat up on the bed, rubbing her eyes. "Yes, Mom. Is everything okay? Is Dad okay?" Raj's heart swelled with happiness at the concern he heard in his daughter's voice for his health. While not the most affectionate or expressive person in the room, Hina did show her love occasionally through her gestures. Mira sighed deeply. "Your dad's fine. He's recovering, you know. We can't let anything stress him out." Raj thought Hina looked away guiltily at her mother's words. "You know what I'm talking about, right?" Mira pressed on. "Yes, Mom. Have you met him again? Outside classes?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure, Mom." Mira's gaze dropped to the bed cover, and her delicate fingers smoothed out the covers. "I know you went to his house on Friday." Hina's expression was that of a deer caught in the headlights. I went to his house to say goodbye," she stammered. Mira's sigh was deep and audible. "I want to believe you. Really, I do. But I can't. You've broken my trust, Hina." Hina was now almost in tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. But really, I had gone to his house for the last goodbye. I'll never see him again. Except at school, of course, where I can't avoid him." "Good. You know, once your dad is better, we'll do something to fix this problem permanently." Hina's ears perked up at the suggestion. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I mean, there's more we can do to fix this problem. I don't want to do anything right now because of your dad's precarious health. But once he's better," at this, Hina threw the covers and jumped out of bed. "You can't punish him, Mom." "It was my fault as much as his. Promise me you won't do anything." Mira rose, placing the strap of her laptop bag across her chest. "I'm not promising anything, sweetheart. Let's talk about our options in a few weeks' time. Until then, if you see him again outside class, I'll know right away." Hina stared at the wall clock behind her mother's head. "I won't see him like I promised." Raj's mind galloped to process the new information he had learned about his daughter. She had a boyfriend. Apparently, a boy from her class. Was that the reason for the strife between his wife and his daughter? Or was there more, he wondered, as he fast-forwarded the part of Mira's day where she attended her Monday morning meeting with her boss and worked in the office. Everything about the exchange surprised him because he was the overprotective parent, constantly worrying about every little thing regarding their daughter, while Mira was more of a liberal parent who allowed Hina to experiment and even encouraged mistakes, even though he thought it inadvisable for young people to date before 18. What Hina was going through was completely natural and expected. Why had his wife freaked out so much on finding out about Hina's boyfriend? Resuming the video from the point where Mira got into her Ford Endeavor after leaving office, Raj watched keenly as she checked her freshly applied lipstick in the rearview mirror and used her dainty hands to smooth her hair and tuck some wild strands behind her ear. She turned on the ignition and began driving in a direction opposite to where their home was located. When the police had questioned Raj about where his wife was returning from that fateful day, he had surmised that perhaps she had taken a detour to the market to shop for something for their daughter's upcoming 17th birthday. And maybe she had liked something, but wanted to discuss with her husband before buying the gift. Raj wasn't quite sure what had prevented him from sharing his suspicions with the police that his wife was probably having an affair and was returning from a rendezvous with the other man. It was probably as a token of respect for their 18-year-old marriage and consideration for their daughter that Raj had kept his suspicions to himself. With rapt attention, Raj watched the curve of the river, hugging the road, and the familiar city roads zipping past the fast-moving vehicle. As he expected, the car moved through the South City Market and towards the residential area next to it. Mira parked the car behind a dented Mahindra XUV 500, parked in the parking space, and stepped out with her purse over her shoulder. She rummaged through her purse for something, and apparently not finding it in there, she leaned into the car, opened the glove compartment, and extracted a pepper spray. With the pepper spray ensconced in her purse, she marched to the front door and rang the bell. The pepper spray confused Raj. If she was going to meet her lover, he'd have expected her to be rummaging in her purse for something other than a pepper spray. The heavy brown door was opened by a balding man with horn-rimmed glasses on his nose. Mr. Sehgal, Hina's physics teacher? Was Mira having an affair with him? She detested the man and had even argued with him over some marks after the first term examination results. Nothing made sense. The man's face deflated on seeing the visitor. Raj thought Sehgal looked shocked to the point of being afraid on seeing Mira. Surprised? Said Mira. Why? Were you expecting my daughter? I don't know what you're talking about, the man stammered. I know you've been having a romantic relationship with my underage daughter. The man inhaled deeply. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have proof. Those letters you wrote to her. I found them, and I immediately knew they weren't written by a boy, but by a grown-up man. How could you do this? You're at least 50 years old. You disgust me. The man's nostrils flared with fury. Listen, you can't come to my doorstep and accuse me of something I haven't done. You need to leave, he said, beginning to close the door. Mira's ring-studded hand stopped the door from closing. I am leaving, but not before I warn you to stay away from my daughter. If you try to talk to her outside the class again, I'm going to inform the police. The only reason I haven't already contacted them is that Hina begged me. She begged me to let it go, and... Mira paused. The man was peering from behind the half-closed door with his narrowed eyes. And what? Mira sighed deeply. And nothing. I'm not calling the police right now because of my husband, who is ill. I don't want him to know about this mess. But if you contact my daughter again, I'll have no option but to call the police. Raj's world was spinning around him. So this was what the mother-daughter arguments were about. Now that he realized what had happened, it made perfect sense. Why then had his mind jumped to the conclusion that his wife was cheating on him, and the reason Hina was arguing with her mother was that she had somehow found out about her mother's affair? How could he have been so naive to jump to a disturbing conclusion based on a mere happenstance? The only thing Mira was trying to do was protecting their daughter from the pedophile and protecting her sick husband from the stress of the situation. The sudden onset of guilt at suspecting his innocent wife of cheating on him and violating her privacy made Raj sick in his stomach, having half a mind to close the laptop screen. Raj continued watching what was probably the last hour of his late wife's life. Soon, she would be on her way back home, and her Ford Endeavor would be hit on the rear by a vehicle that would send her spinning towards the river and to her death. Things seemed to be moving in slow motion as Mira delivered the final threat to the physics teacher, and leaving him with his jaw hanging, reversed her car out of the driveway, turning around towards her home. As she drove on the highway next to the river, Raj kept his gaze on her rearview mirror, his heart racing. If he was lucky, he'd be able to view the plate number of the vehicle that had hit his wife's car and hand over the evidence to the police. With his heart in his throat, Raj watched several large vehicles on the highway approaching his wife's car, and some of them overtaking it. Resisting an urge to tightly shut his eyes, Raj continued watching the last few minutes of his wife's life. What must be going on in her mind at the time, he wondered. He regretted not telling his wife how much he loved her and how much he appreciated her supporting the family, especially since he had lost his job. He regretted every harsh word he had said to his wife, every missed opportunity to appreciate her. Each occasion he could have been kinder to her, thinking of their arguments, and every time he had raised his voice at her, made him burn with shame. Was this his punishment for not living a purposeful life, for not living deliberately, but just drifting along the currents of everyday life? Raj sat bolt upright as he saw a vehicle he recognized approach his wife's car from behind. This couldn't be right. Why was the man following her? Raj knew the answer to the question a split second before he saw Segal ram his Mahindra XUV 500 into his wife's car and send her spinning towards the river. Water engulfed the world around him, and he saw the bubbles of air escaping his wife's mouth and nose as the water pressure shattered the windows and rushed into the rapidly sinking car, drowning its only occupant. At some point in time, the glasses drifted away from Mira's face, and through the camera, Raj saw his wife's face for the very last time. Some of the guilt that Raj felt for violating his wife's privacy was washed away with the knowledge that he now had the evidence to bring his wife's murderer to justice. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Raj closed the video file and picked up the phone to dial the police.